Friends, this is a unprecedented kind of a thing that is happening in JNU. This is something which never happened in JNU. In the year 1983, there was a change of the admission policy, and just because the students were very agitated and went against the political leadership of that time, and it forced the administration to take drastic measures, and that is how the Bipin Chandra Committee was formulated. And from there onwards, this whole idea of elitism has been a mainstay of the promotion in the admission process of JEE. And what is important is that when there is a shift towards larger inclusiveness, now this whole idea of inclusiveness, how you do it, how you create, and then there are those so-called UGC regulations. Now the gazetteer notification of the UGC itself offers a shield to any institution in order to create exclusion in the society. This is a big catch. Though they claim that we have nothing to do with your admission, we are simply regulating the process of admission and the legal aspect of the validity of the PhDs. Now the question over here is that particular regulation, when it comes to the adoption of the universities, respective universities, now one has to understand that though you claim that you are there for the practice of Article 14, that is equality, and then you further claim that you want to adhere to the Article 16(1), which talks about equality of opportunity. But in that process, in the process of equality of opportunities, you are violating Article 16(4). Now what the administration is saying, or what the general people the perception is that, oh, the whole issue of reservation is not going to get affected. Means that 22.5 will be there, that 27% will be there, and so on and so forth. But the question here is that suppose a particular center is having vacancy of only 3 seats. Let us imagine this hypothetical this thing. How you are going to provide reservations in that? Then they say, no, we will follow the DOPT rule. What is DOPT rule? The DOPT rule says that in such situation, you have to club the categories. That means either you will have to give admission to the SC or you will have to give admission to the ST. Either of them, and not both. So this is in a way creates exclusion, and in a way also violates Article 16(4). And consequently, the whole idea of Article 14 gets defeated, and Article 16(1) also gets defeated. This is the legal constitutional problem with this kind of a process. Now, as far as the university administration is concerned, this university administration is reading the gazetteer notification only in its letter and not in spirit. Because you want everything to be written. You want everything to be written. I mean, how you are going to behave yourself has to be written, and therefore that is rule. It is something like you cannot think beyond positive current and a negative current. That's the whole trouble. And as long as 2 currents are not checkmate, there cannot be a light also. That problem is also there. But you do not try to understand that problem, that it has to have some kind of a resistance in order to create something. And the whole regulation is being implemented only in its letter and not in spirit. Now how it is so? JNU was set up by the Act of Parliament. Let me also inform you that JNU was the first university in the entire country to be set up by the Act of Parliament. The second university that came by the Act of Parliament was Hyderabad Central University, and then later Ambedkar Central University, Lucknow, and then Northeast Hill University. These were the universities which were set up by the Act of Parliament, and all other universities were established by the ordinance. And then that ordinance get ratified in the Parliament. This is the history. And JNU is the first university not only set up by the Act of Parliament but also created as a research university in the country. So far, all our universities have been teaching universities and never been a research universities. With BHU, Aligarh, then Shanti Niketan, all Mumbai University, Allahabad University, all these universities were created as teaching universities. And therefore, research does not become primary component of those universities, whereas in JNU, research becomes primary component along with the teaching. Whereas in other universities, it is the teaching which remains a primary component, whereas research is not does not get any kind of an impetus. Now, here in this case, a teaching university has a specified kind of a workload. Now, this particular idea of workload, I don't know how it emerged. I have no idea of the history because I tried to speak with some of the senior people who happen to be on the as a members of the UGC committees, and somehow they also failed to explain how this logic of the workload emerged. But by and large, like some of the regulatory authority found that there is a overburden of on the faculties and all those things. So how you are going to balance it? So they devise the formula that okay, assistant professor will teach 16 hours per week, the associate professor will teach for 14 hours, and professors will teach for 12 hours. That is the mechanism that was evolved by the UGC, and they sent it to everywhere. And then accordingly, and the education being under the concurrence list of the constitution, so the state government, every state government has to adopt, and then unless until the directorate of the education of the state government or the education department of the state government does not direct to their universities to adopt this particular regulation, they will not do it. That part is also there. So the whole mechanism of the workload was calculated accordingly, and at the same time there were research institute in the country. Say for example, in case of social sciences, like you have Tata Institute of Social Sciences, you have Deccan College Postgraduate Research Institute. So you have similar such institutions which were existing in the country where there was a specialized teaching component, and this specialized teaching component institutions were exempted. They did not follow this whole 16, 14 and 12. Now how the workload gets calculated in the university like JNU is that not only the teaching, whatever teaching the teachers do, but also the guidance of the MPhil PhD. Apart from that guidance of the MPhil PhD, even a normal discussion in the classroom and outside the classroom with the teacher is also considered as part of your workload. This is how it is. Why it is so? Because it encourages greater interaction, and it is also part of the learning process for the students. This is the idea, this is the spirit behind this process. Now that is why I said that the regulation is being understood only in letter and not in spirit. Now the regulation does not forbid you to cut down the intake capacity, the intake capacity has to be maintained as per the as per the Central University Admission Institute Act, and under that act, by the logic of that act, you cannot reduce the intake of the intake of the universities. That is how it is. Now, the whole idea of reduction in the seats, reduction and all those things, my point is, like, when people are willing to take extra workload, there is a problem. There are certain cases, there are certain centers where there is a lot of problem of the teacher. Now, what had happened actually, say for example, Center for Indian Languages, there were two streams. One was a translation stream and another was a literature stream. And all the professors from the translation stream got retired, and where students will go, so that students were transferred to the literature section. And that is how the faculty was loaded with 20, 25, 30 students. This is the history. Now, who is responsible for that? Are the teachers responsible for that, or is it the administration and in general even the regulatory authority which is responsible? Because the regulatory authority does not see these are the problems, essential problems, and there is a character of each university which over a period of time has been developed and is being implemented. Now, JNU, what had happened that every time the admission policies to the central universities is discussed, JNU is always quoted as an example. Now, we have an administration which doesn't want to do that. It doesn't want JNU to be quoted as a very model kind of an example. Every year, like even in your Lingdo committee and all, JNU elections are quoted as a very good example. Similarly, in all the parliamentary committees reports, JNU is always quoted as an example for as far as the admission tests are concerned, as far as process of admission is concerned. Now, similar kind of things are always asked by the UGC from the to implement to be implemented by the other central universities. And also the UGC had even given money to conduct examinations all over India to some of the universities. JNU never got money. JNU conducts examination on its own. It's all your money on which the examination is conducted, entire process is conducted. So there is this fundamental difference, and there is this whole unique character which the university has developed. Why university is rated as good university in the country? Because of the students which are engaged in the research, because the faculty which are engaged in the research, and also because of the creation of the inclusiveness in the entire character of the academic institution. Now, if we systematically annul this whole idea of inclusion, obviously there is going to be an anarchy. And this anarchy has been a mainstay of the Brahmanical thinking process, or even for that matter, Brahmanical cultural nationalism. And therefore, one has to really understand as to what your constitution, that article 51A guarantees for the promotion of the national integration, for the promotion of the fraternity, and also to create a scientific temperament. How you are going to create this kind of a scientific temperament? You cannot bypass people, and you cannot make them as a target and then hit them. So this whole regulatory mechanism is going to affect more exclusion rather than inclusion, because UGC has given legal tool in the hands of the universities to shield themselves, to make their academic institution inclusive, to make it socially more vibrant, to make it intellectually more vibrant. So this not sorry, not to make it socially vibrant, not to make it intellectually vibrant, not to make it socially inclusive. This is a kind of a legal tool which is being offered by the UGC to the university institutions in the country. This is what this regulatory mechanism is. And there is another another problem which needs to be understood, is that this whole logic of 6 student and then 3 student or whatever number it is as per their logic, it is 4, 5 and 8 something, or 4, 6 and 8. Now this 4, 6 and 8, we have an integrated program of MPhil PhD. Those who enter in MPhil, they, after successful completion of the MPhil, they go to the PhD. And that is how there is this whole idea of carry forward. Now suppose somebody in a particular center, say for example in history, suppose somebody wants to work in medieval history, and you claim that, oh, there are only three seats vacant for PhDs, and therefore that person who is interested to work in medieval history, but the seats are with vacant only of the ancient faculty, who is expert in ancient faculty. Now, is it not a crime, or for that matter, is it not a irony that you are forcing that student to work under the expert who is in ancient India and not under the expert who is in the medieval India? So there is this catch, and how you are going to resolve this catch? That administration is completely silent, because they are reading the things only in later. Our leader of the university is reading every regulation only in its letter and not in spirit. And at the same time, they do not understand the character of the JNU. JNU is not like a technological institution. It's a university. It consists of many things. It cannot, you cannot run the entire things, or you cannot judge only by the positive current and the negative current. You need to have many more currents to understand the outcome, the intrinsic qualities, the extrinsic qualities, and also the intricacies which are involved in the functioning of any institution. As long as you remain immune to understanding of the social dimensions of the Indian society, I don't think we can really change the face of the country. The mythical reality, the mythic when is promoted as realities, and when the regulations are read only in letter and not in spirit, you can imagine how that can be a very deadly combination for the future of any institution. At the same time, one also has to understand like how you are going to give space to each and every section of the society. You need to rethink over it. You can't be autocratic all the time. The regulation is there, okay, fine. If you want to have a 50% of your admission process, like it should be considered as a 50%. Now again, see, earlier there was this, no, we will consider only 50%. Now there is these things that because of those regulations and everything, now they are saying, okay, fine, this category will have this percent, this much qualifying marks and all those things. Now that is what is being put on the website these days. But having done that, there is also, you can as well maintain your earlier process, and still there is a complete silence as to whether the Viva marks will be taken as 100% or Viva mark will be or it will be taken like the written and the Viva as the combination things, which are in practice. And moreover, the process of admission and everything is always discussed in the academic council, and even at the center level it is always discussed. And then the decisions are taken accordingly. Now you see, even while make I said it in earlier that who is the responsible, the people who drafted the university rules, this the constitution of JNU are equally responsible. Let me tell you why they created this whole discretionary power for the vice chancellor. Dr. Ambedkar even did not give discretionary power to the prime minister and the president. It's very clear. But these so-called intellectuals of this nation have created this whole idea of discretionary power. Now then the question is how many times and where you want to use this discretionary power. There has to have some limit to the discretionary power. And therefore, it will always affect the internal dynamics, the whole ethos of the character of this university, and it will lead to more exclusion rather than inclusion. And that will create more anarchy. The anarchy is very much part and the parcel of the Brahmanism, Brahmanical thinking. It is this Brahmanical thinking which is maintaining hierarchy, which is maintaining this anarchy, which is creating this anarchy. And I think everyone should be capable enough to understand the dynamics of those things. And there are those constitutional provisions, if which because everything has to stand in the court of law. Let me tell you, if you it will be very difficult even for JNU to defend in the court of law. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.